I know Derek and Manu cannot attend today. Yeah. Sergey, do you want to start the meeting as regular with our pool activities and the issue activities? Yeah.
Sure, you can start the recording. Did you start the recording? Okay, so recording is in progress. Today, hello everybody, it's October 11th, 2022. It's a SIG Node weekly meeting. Hi everybody, we have great participation. We will start with the regular update on our PR status. As you know that we just exited the cap freeze, and there was a lot of caps were approved for this release, and we will start working on that. So it's a good time to start development and looking at active PRs. This week we have many PRs closed, open and closed, like somebody was trying to experiment, and there were lots of very small PRs that were more of suggestions rather than actual improvements. But we also closed the merged like regular PRs, so it's good work, everybody approving things. We're a little bit down from last week, but not much down. So maybe with the course of development stage of a release, we can merge more PRs. Earlier we will merge them, earlier we will find issues. So please go ahead and try to review something. And with that, we go to the first topic, is Matthias talking about work group.
Hello, everybody. So we discussed about it last week, I think, and we missed the deadline for the 126 enhancement freeze. So as suggested, we should create the work group and go for the full solution. So I just came here to request to create this work group, and I would like to propose Sergey as the head for this work group.
Thank you, Matthias. Yeah, I think what practice showed, if you start actually poking people around the cap freeze date, or like during the cap finalization date, then we wouldn't be able to complete all the discussions. All discussions typically hitting the wall of like, what is our long-term solution, and fear that sidecar proposal will creep the scope into multiple areas like security, like let's run side containers in with different security policies, maybe different runtime class. This kind of concerns creeping out into this conversation, and since we don't have clear answers on all of them, we typically stall and miss the release. So I think this time we can start early, and during the 126 work, we can get an agreement on what we want to do in 127, and by cap being open for 127, we will have some proposal ready to go. I think I will. We may need to schedule a separate meeting than that for the work group. I will send a doodle, and we'll see what who wants to participate and what time this doodle will give us. I think initially we can start meet a little bit more often, and then we can slow down and get into document writing mode.
Sergey, last week we have a few of us get together discussing what we can do for 1.26. Did you summarize what we talk about, and can you summarize here, because that is kind of the sudden request, and I hope to share with the SIG Node here. Make sure everyone on the same page here, right?
Yeah. So there is a little bit summarization of sidecar problem in this document that Matthias posted, but also to continue on that and to expand a little bit, we generally sidecar started with a proposal a few years back, and this proposal was rejected with a suggestion to go into two directions. First direction is to suggest maybe smaller step towards sidecars that will be least controversial. And second direction is to define a long-term strategy for sidecars. So from smaller step solution, we went into Keystone and then terminate pod solutions. Neither of them was taken because Keystone wasn't taken because it's much better to do sidecars than Keystone, and it's pretty much the same meaning, but we'll have more benefits of having sidecars rather than Keystones. And terminate pod wasn't taken because even though we can come up with scenarios where terminate pod is needed, we cannot clearly articulate and clearly confirm that those scenarios will be used for customers. So we don't want to create something that enables scenarios that we just dreamed about. We want some real confirmation from customers. And second work stream of defining the long-term strategy, I think we concentrated too much on defining life cycle policies and life cycle ordering, and we concentrated a little bit less on what other scope creep can happen. And I think that was a real concern from many people. What else sidecars will bring once we introduce them? So let's say we agreed on lifecycle aspect of it, but then like how do we handle security aspect of it, or how do we handle other requirement, like other dreams of some community members about running sidecars on even on different machines or running them in some different scope. So all this considerations wasn't taken care of, and I think we need to do it this way. And also summarizing some of the discussions, we had this proposal to have DAG, like direct acyclic graph of dependencies, something similar to systemd. But over the course of discussions, we realized that DAG, even though it may enable more complex scenarios, we cannot come up with any, and DAG will make simple scenarios to be implemented way more difficult and sometimes even impossible. So I think overall agreement among many people right now is that DAG is not a direction we want to go. We want to go with some kind of stages or some kind of phases approach when we define some types of containers and make some special meaning for those. So yeah, at least we get out of DAG problem. And we also, I think the agreement right now is that we want to solve the problem of containers starting before init containers. If not the first iteration, we need to make sure that we have a way to extend sidecars into that scenario. This is a short summary.
Thanks for that. I just want to say that the doc is not propose anything. The doc is just list so far all the requests. So thanks, Sergey, dig into all the things. So I also spent the time to comment on that one for the why, kind of at least represent what my concern there and kind of proposal. I mean, it's not like even at least of those issues, it's not mean like any proposal is wrong or right. And I just basically want to say, here's the problem we need to attack. And why we couldn't make progress in the past, it is people didn't explore, answer those concerns. So I couldn't represent Derek, but some of those, I believe Derek and I share the same concerns. So that's why if people want help on the sidecar container, interesting on this work group, and please take a look at that one. So you have the background context. So please help and join. Another thing it is, I just want to say the material, even like last week, and Manu actually reached out to me about this. We didn't use in work group because work group first thing you need to answer like how long you are going to. But we do agree, say we need to have at least the bi-weekly like a group or sub-team discussing and a sub-team as the signal and discussing and to make as early as possible to make progress. So we won't like this time, like 1.26 always last minutes, and we couldn't make progress. One of the things I mentioned to Manu, I said this one actually is bigger than the in-place pod update, right? So to me, honestly, actually it's because we changed this whole like life cycle, could it be potentially. but we didn't spend much of the time. But you think about in-place pod vertical scaling, actually how many rounds we've been back and forth. So we try to work group is really important to me, and let's make this progress, make this one. But the work group, we need to first think about what it is exit criteria, and then what's the process, and like for example, report back to the SIG node, like the monthly, bi-weekly, or whatever things. So how often? So those kind of things we need to settle down, right? So, and also we don't want to forever have the work group, right? So this is why when people normally heard of the work group, they are a little bit concerned, and let's have something like the work group by end of when that. This is brainstorming what I propose. I'm thinking about by end of the 1.27, or maybe by end of the cap close deadline for 1.27, at least, right? So then we can talk about extension or whatever things. How do you think? So
yeah, I think till the end of the year sounds like a good time frame. Maybe a little bit further to 127 cap freeze.
yeah, and also the cadence, like the bi-weekly. Manu and I discussed, we think about bi-weekly, maybe it's okay cadence, but I'm totally okay, up to you folks decided. A weekly, bi-weekly, maybe earlier, 1 to weekly, maybe, yeah, but that's the menu I just shared with you last week. I promised him to bring to SIG Node today, but I saw the message already proposed, so I didn't put it here. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on sidecars? Okay, wait for Doodle then, and we'll go from there. Vinay, are you here, or you want to? Let me check. Vinay, if you're here, speak up. If not, I think I see comments from Raven. Raven, maybe you can comment.
Yeah, so I backported the community support to 169. So I can check with the community and see when we can release that. I think that is the only blocker. Yeah, that's the only blocker right now for the main PR.
Do we test on master of continuity? Would it be enough?
Oh no, it's in that release branch already.
Okay. Okay. If there is no more changes, then we'll go to Michael. Standardization of kill.
Yes, and that's the topic. So essentially, just a heads up, because I think some people might be interested in SIG Node. So originally, this started from the cap. I'm still working on. I mean, the cap is done, but now I will continue the implementation on the adding pod conditions to pods that are failing, and this is the retriable and not retriable pod failures for jobs. And in this work, I'm using I rely on the killed reason to be set by container runtime, and it turns out that the container D and CRIO do this, but there is no standard. So, and one of the concerns of the reviewers was that this may break. In the process, it turned out that also the current master of, the current Kubernetes relies also on this. And I was thinking it might be a good idea to standardize this, like to enforce that the implementations set it and they don't set it differently in the future so that we don't break. And I created an issue to start the discussion, and also raised a PR where I suggest like the simplest solution just to document it. So that's the first part. There is another part of this issue that is to convey more information somehow. So this is just the first part is about freezing the status quo. The second part would be about conveying more information, which could be useful at least for the CAP, which would be to convey if the killer was invoked due to exceeding the limits, or just the system running low on memory. And currently there is no way to distinguish that. So it would be also good to start some discussion about that, and possibly, but this is more involving. So because this probably will also require some implementation, but the CRI implementation. So I think I will not myself start implementation of the second, but just raising this as a nice to have that. That would be good to have from my perspective, but it's a little bit off my expertise. So, but for the first part, I raised PR. So, yeah, you are welcome to maybe jump in and review. So I guess that's from me, unless there are some questions.
Oh,
go ahead then.
Let's discuss this one. Actually, what you propose for long time signal to try to do. This is also SIG Node to have the user space womb killer. We are so looking forward. I'm looking forward. That's more than 10 years. So one of the things first thing I think about, if it is the if we got this is due to of the C group kill, like it's not global kill, and the C group kill. Actually, I thought we already converging between of the container runtime and also the Kubernetes. But maybe like after we have the CRI and all those kind of container runtime evolve, and now we diverge. But that's the first thing we agree, we standardize that one. But for the system, actually, yeah, we do have the problem, because unless the CRI container runtime give us the things, and a lot of time we have to, because the kernel didn't kill entire of the C group, kernel killed the process, right? So that's why then we have to do the scraping about the process, and so this is why the user and the system even when I was in Borg, I've been requested to the Linux kernel team and community. So I'm looking forward for this kind of things, and hopefully we can converging, standardize, and on the community, not just us, and also for Linux kernel community altogether. So then we can do better jobs. Yeah. But let's discuss more about what you propose here, and because it's been non-drawing project we've been proposed in the past, we try to converging. Yeah.
So Michael, I have a question. Will this standardization block you from implementing what you have in CAP when job will or will not retry on kill, or it's just nice to have improvement?
So no, it doesn't block me, because what I'm going to do is to rely on the current signal that is conveyed to kubelet from container runtime. So as I said, the killed is set. And this is not a precedence to rely on that, because the currently in code of Kubernetes, you can find also this sort of informal dependency to this, which is not nice because it can break. But I mean, technically, the status quo is that this is what the implementations do. So I think it's very unlikely to break, because others, it's like for 5 years now. So
but it may break
shouldn't.
for other times, you're saying? So if user using like CRI Dockerd or some like other runtimes, it still may break, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess we will rely on documenting the fact, but yeah, it would be much better to enforce that this is set as containerd does it.
And another question I had is if job status retries rely on this status, how easy it is today for customers to understand that the pod was killed, or like if customer will complain that this cap doesn't work, so retry didn't happen or retry happened when it shouldn't happen, is there a clear way to troubleshoot, and like is there any improvements we need to make in this part of I know that historically it wasn't very easy for people to understand that something was killed, like there was some issues. Do you see any issues today, or it's clear as day that like how easy it will be for troubleshoot your cap once customers start using it?
I think that it's well, it's a little bit tough question to answer because it's about predicting the future. But what can go wrong? Like, okay, so so this feature that I'm developing in this cap is twofold. So first is jobs that customers can configure the policies about handling pod failures depending on the end state of the pod. So that's like the big picture, the what we extend in for the jobs themselves. But then how do we declare the pod end state? So to declare the pod end state in a sort of good and easy to track way, we use pod conditions. So the pod conditions themselves are sort of attempt to unify the pod end state depending on the reason for the failure. So we wouldn't even need actually the pod conditions technically. We could just hack in job controller to retry or don't retry based on the killed reason, as currently we have. So the pod conditions are actually the resource exhausted pod condition is actually an attempt to make it clear to the user that so that the user don't look at the low level thing, but at the pod conditions. And we add the pod conditions in other scenarios as well, like preemption and all the failure. So that's from the, so user may, if a user observes an issue with retries of the job, the first place he would look if the pod condition is added or not. I imagine that this is the first thing on the path on troubleshooting. Then let's say for the killed, we would add the resource exhausted condition. So the user check, is the resource exhausted condition there or not? If there is no, then okay, then you need to have more knowledge. Is the reason on one of the containers set to be killed, or something that suggests that it's out of memory? Let's say there is another runtime that sets it differently. Then user could compare if the pod condition is set. At least user, let's assume the scenario user doesn't see the pod condition, but see the reason that suggests that it was killed. Then there would be like a mismatch, and that's, I don't know if that answers your question. So the feature is like twofold. First is the standardization, and the second is the job controller. And you know, you would need to check both levels of the stack to see where the problem is, and But essentially, what I think user once you pinpoint that there is a problem with a pod, then you would just check the YAML of the pod and inspect manually what's happening. Maybe check the events, the like standard troubleshooting techniques, logs.
I see. So there will be clear indications that it actually was kill, and okay, I think it answered my question. So there will be enough information in the pod status, in pod condition.
Yes, unless something goes really wrong, like it's not set by the runtime, but then yeah, that means might be more involved in troubleshooting, but
I just want
yeah.
to tell you today, will be by design, it's really wrong. Unless you hit C group limit, then you will be womb killed. This is why I give you that information. But if the cis womb, you won't get that. Earlier, that's what I keep mentioning. But we could make, and also there's when we detect, if Kubernetes acting faster, detect that potentially will be cis womb, and then we'll kill based on your policy. Then we give you signal also. So you can see that if kernel acts, system acts, and then we cannot. This is the long-standing issues. This is why I think about user land womb killing can help here. In the past, we did sweeping of the process and then figure out which process being womb killed, and then in that which C group, we then give you. I mean, this is in the book what I did. So give you this problem. So that's why we request a lot of time in the kernel. I don't think about today's SQL v2 have that SQL v2 womb user land womb could be implemented, that kind of things, but not today yet. So that's why you won't get 100%. But I mean, I still like this cap because that's a standardized existing message we already knowing, and the create of the holistic of the pipeline for those things. So still is really valuable. But I just want to earlier warning, you won't, because you are only doing this work. You will get every single thing is being womb killed. We are not there yet.
Okay.
So what?
Sorry. Yeah, I just had kind of quick question, comment about kind of this effort. So I was kind of trying to understand maybe one thing, how practically are we planning to standardize this? Like, because it's just a string, right, that's set by the container runtime. Like, it's very clear today how we make CRI changes, right? We have repo, we make this proto change, et cetera, everybody implements it. But for something like this, where this is just a string that somebody sets, how do we standardize on this, like, practically speaking? Is it something we document and then we have some conformance test for, or how do we actually do this?
Michael,
that's a good question. In the PR that I propose, the solution, I just propose to document the field, but yeah, I don't know. So that's just the simplest thing I considered is to do, but I don't know. Good question.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe we document it and have some node conformance tests that test both, like, I don't know, containerd and cryo, for example, today as a starting step. But I'm not sure if maybe we have some precedent for kind of some type of CRI standardization that's not like the actual proto change, right? If we have done something like that, I'm not sure.
I think that for the logging format is why they lack that today. So we only have a doc. We tell people that for logs, container logs, you have to validate in this way. And we, of course, we have test, kubectl log, also test, but it's not a proto change.
Gotcha. Yeah, so maybe we can do something similar. That makes sense. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Lantau, login is a perfect example. I thought of. I was trying to come up with in my brain like it's ordering of calls is also not standardized, like not documented clearly, but it's something that Kubernetes does do in a very specific way. But login is a bad example. I think we can just define the constant and slowly migrate to this constant.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I had one other comment I wanted to bring, slightly related to this, regarding kills. One of the things I've seen that's kind of weird today is if you launch a container that has multiple processes, right, like PID1 and then multiple other processes that launches as sub-processes, and those sub-processes get killed. Sometimes, like, I think the container runtime is only looking for PID1 within the container that's being killed. So if some of the other processes are killed, the container runtime will not detect that. And so C group v2, I think, actually has some mechanism where the kill can be for the whole C group, but we haven't actually enabled that yet. So maybe that's something we can look forward to doing as well. So I think that behavior is a little confusing.
I think for C group v1, the behavior is probably opposite, if I remember correctly, is that as long as one process is killed in C group, you will see that error message, even if it's not PID1. So basically, yeah. So basically, when the C group womb, it will just randomly pick a process to kill. And it may not be PID1, but even it's not PID1, just some random child process in your container, you'll still get this killed message.
Yeah, David, that's the first not the first, one of the top issue we fixed when earlier Kubernetes development. And we worked together with the Docker. That time Docker is not containerd yet. So we didn't solve the problem is on the syswom, because the syswom is kind of like the kernel random pick up the process, right? Of course, it's not random. They have the order, and they think about the best one to be release of the memory, and so the kill. So we didn't fix that problem. But for the if you reach your C group local limit, actually we kill, and we basically bring this whole container down. Unless the recently container runtime, there's the regression, but that's the one.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've seen some issues like that. Let me take a closer look maybe and see if I can repair that, or if that's still an issue. Well, I'll take a closer look. Thanks for saying that. It's not the first time this issue has been brought up.
Yeah,
I'll take a closer look.
If it is syswom, if you should say the syswom, and then you can see that one. I hope C group v2. That's what I mentioned. I hope earlier. C group v2 user-named womb killing can help us to address that problem. This is also non-standing issues what we have, even with the book a long time back. So we have to solve that problem. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks for that. Got it.
Okay. Any more questions on this?
Just like I looked at briefly at the proto, and there are also some other fields. Let's say info map for pod status, sandbox status response, and there is also like the field itself is map string to string. But the documentations of the field says that like the key could be arbitrary string and value should be in JSON format. So put some constraint on the value by documenting. So I think there are more cases like that. So maybe that's sensible to just restrict by documentation.
Yeah, and it goes into next topic. If nobody have any comments on kills, when containers will adopt this standard, it may break some backward compatibility stories because somebody may have taken dependence on certain strings, and it goes into the topic of containerd 1.6 is going LTS. If you haven't heard about it, containerd is one of the runtimes that we use, and it was typically been supported for a year or something like that. And before, we always had like clear mapping of containerd version to actively developed Kubernetes versions. Sometimes it was like one of the versions was going away, like going out of support in Kubernetes land, while containerd version is still around. This time, suggestion is to introduce LTS, and 1.6 will be live and in small development till 2025. And clearly by 2025, the like test matrix of containerd version versus versions of Kubernetes that are being actively supported will be different. So today we have some list of supported containerd versions are Kubernetes versions, and this list will be fluid now. It wouldn't be like 1-to-1 mapping, or like not like 1-to-3 mapping kind of thing. So yeah, if you haven't heard about it, please take a look. There are some. I mean, we need to understand what containerd will be saying about which Kubernetes versions it supports. I suggest in one of the discussions that we may start saying that containerd like patch version for LTS support this kind of Kubernetes versions, and after this patch version it supports new Kubernetes versions, but it's not written in PR yet, so maybe something that we can specify going forward.
Sergey, one question about this is that, sorry about not following it closely, is that I saw that there will be some major changes to containerd core service in 1.7, and I just discussed with Raven offline, and I saw something like one is potentially sandbox API, based on my understanding. Another one is they're adding the progress, image for program transfer service. So basically, do we, I saw, at least for those two, I feel like they are quite related to the SIG Node work, right? Do we have a list of the major changes they plan to make? And is SIG Node aware of those changes? Because, yeah, probably it's only myself. Sorry about, if that's the case, sorry about that. But if it's not, maybe it's useful to to introduce what they are going to do in 1.7 in SIG Node, so that everyone knows that they're going to have a big change, but it's good for the community overall.
Yeah, it's a good point. We don't actually discuss it here. I know some people closely watch and been part of both SIGs. So we have this knowledge floating back and forth, but it's not officially being presented at this meeting. Yeah, and to that point, 1.7 indeed introduces sandbox APIs that will change a lot of APIs. And 2.0 is even bigger because it will also remove also deprecated APIs. So let's say how we configure mirrors, for example, registry mirrors. Today we have and in config toml, and going forward it will be a separate folder with files for each registry that needs to be configured. So it's quite a big change that we also looking forward to adopt in 1.6 like earlier, but it will require some changes. There are some discussions about it in issues in SIG Node. But yeah, major changes are coming, and that's probably the reason 1.6 is going LTS for some time. Is your request to bring these issues here and like have more discussions, so like knowledge exchange sessions? Or your request is anybody watching on both?
Oh, it's just knowledge sharing. I mean, because they are going to LTS, and they mentioned that there will be huge changes in 1.7. I just asked whether it's, I mean, the SIG Node is aware of like those changes. If we already know, that's good. Yeah, I will go and learn.
Nanto, thanks for bringing this one. At least I don't know. And so I now when you bring it up, I briefly remember you did mention to me a while back. So can we have the action item at least here, understand what it is to deprecate, and at least report back to SIG Node, right? So we have, if we depend on some deprecate of the API, right? So we need to find the alternative. I believe we might don't have those dependency on those deprecate, but we need the clear, right, to agree upon this is okay to deprecate and nobody's using. At least we don't depend on those. I mean, SIG Node, the managed component don't depend on those kind of things. We need to have that story, right?
Yep. Raven pasted a list of improvements making in 1.7, and I pasted this one example of configs that going away, and I think Ben highlighted the issue with kind that being configured with a single file right now, and it will be a bigger change for them to switch to multiple config files to configure registries. So yeah, if you're interested in this kind of deprecations, some of them highlighted already in issues. Maybe it's a good idea to have a topic for next week. Raven, do you want to just highlight all the like big API changes that 1.7 is working on, since you pasted it here?
Yeah, I can check with the community and see if we have any list of breaking changes, deprecating changes. But yeah, I'll try to come up with something.
I know there's a decent amount of changes in Windows that are in 1.7 and not 1.6, so I'm curious if those are going to be eligible for backport to some LTSC release or LTS release or not.
I think it's worth discussing on this LTS PR, Mark, to understand like what will be the level of acceptance. Like what I mean, right now it says that we will even port some small features to LTS branches, but if you're talking about major changes, it may be worth confirming.
Yeah, I'll take a look at those sometime early this week. Thanks for bringing this up.
And it will be disappointment if Kubernetes doesn't support LTS of Containerd at some point, because I mean, I think from Kubernetes standpoint, we also need to understand like which versions of Containerd we want to support. If we at some point we just say like Containerd is still being actively supported in LTS, but Kubernetes doesn't support it because we miss some APIs, or like we don't support it for Windows, it may be strange from community perspective. It may not be very well received.
Yeah, it'd be much easier, I think, if we had an LTS Kubernetes release too to pair with it. But yeah, I'll take a look and add some comments.
Sounds like that's all for today. So any other topic people want to board up? Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank
Everyone
you.
got almost 15 minutes back. Thanks. See you next week.
Thanks.